All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Let's Talk. I am Sydney Davis Jr. Jr. This is a Sunday night live call-in show that happens every single week for Skeptic Haven. And tonight we have our guest Aron Ra, and people will be able to call in and ask an atheist literally anything. So let's go.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
All right, all right. Aron, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
What are your rats' names? We need introductions.
This one is Chibi. This is the little blonde one is Chibi. And then this one is Mimi, and this one is Wendy.
Wendy, that's amazing. I love it. I'm glad they could join us today. How are you doing? How's it going for you today?
It's all right. You know, life gets weird sometimes.
Yeah, and you've got like a million things going on, I'm sure, as I see.
Yeah, a little bit. And plans keep changing, and I have to keep adjusting to keep up.
Yeah. Well, hopefully nothing too crazy happens here. I guess we'll see the calls that we get. For those in the chat, we'd love to have you call in and ask an atheist literally anything. But until then, let's see. We got some questions here that are waiting. Let's see. Will religion ever go extinct?
No, but it will be replaced.
Yes.
So, down through history, we've replaced one religion with another over and over again. I mean, Islam almost completely routed Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism inspired Judaism, which inspired Christianity, which inspired Islam. Yeah. And Islam is now trying to eradicate Zoroastrianism, which was the root of the whole thing, for monotheism anyway. Polytheism has come about in all forms. And now Now we're in this interesting thing, which was also the fall of Greece, by the way. The democracy of Greece fell to the same thing, where we suddenly have a culture that is not interested in being the Renaissance people, is not interested in studying and advancing science and philosophy and understanding, and is instead bragging about how ignorant we are and trying to be extra special hateful about anybody that doesn't look or think or act like or dress like I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I feel like humans naturally have to worship something, whether it's their favorite artist, whether it's their favorite musician. So I feel like there will always be worship of some sort, a religion of some sort, even if people aren't willing to admit that they worship some celebrity or some singer like a religion. I don't think that hero worship and making gods out of idols will ever go away for human beings.
Yeah, I want to contest you a little bit, but then I realize that I'm kind of autistic in that. I mean,
go for it. No, go for it.
I'd love to hear it. I'm not on the spectrum, but at the same time, I feel like it because I want to say things like, "Who cares about football?" But I know that the answer is most people.
Not I.
Yeah, I don't worship. I can't even imagine what it would be like to worship. No being worthy of worship would want to be worshipped. Mm. I know that because I deserve worship.
Well, I say that I don't worship anything, and then I realize that I spend all of my money building aviaries for my birds, and all of my time, and I give them whatever they want, and it's an altar in there is basically what it is. So I can't say that I don't worship.
How many parrots do you have?
8.
You have 8 parrots. Now, see, that's an obsessive pet owner. That's just crazy. I wouldn't even be able to compete with somebody as crazy as that.
I'm telling you though, once you got one, it's like, it's hard to stop. I don't know how you stopped with a double yellow Amazon. I would just keep going.
Because parrots are way expensive.
No, but here's the thing though, we rescue a lot of them. So I've only paid for maybe 3 of them. Really? And it wasn't even that much. Yeah. The others are rescues. We collect them from all over. So I would agree, if I had paid for all of them, too much.
Before we started broadcasting, I mentioned that I had for 11 years before I had the parrot that I have now, who kind of was a rescue too.
Yeah.
The parrot I had before that was a rescue as well. I had a sun conure that I rescued from a house where they had it for 5 years and considered it furniture, never interacted with the bird at all.
To me, that's devastating.
I took the bird out of the cage for the first time at 5 years, never being out of the cage. I took it out of the cage for the first time, and it was biting me and angry and all of that. And I took it out of the cage every day.
Yep.
For 11 years.
Yes. So, ours. Yeah, they go in the cage 7:30 p.m., 7:30 a.m. That's it. They're out the rest of the time. Just if parrots are amazing creatures. You shouldn't, if you don't know how magnificent they are, you should visit them, you should play with them, you should pet them, but
Hold on a
don't get
second.
one.
I have next to me, I have that cage, and then I have this
Yes.
tree right here that my parrot sits on.
Yeah.
Or he's not out right now, but very often he sits on this tree right next to me.
That's amazing. Yeah, if anybody checks out my Instagram, Sydney Davis Jr., all you'll see is parrot stuff. That's it. Just like the castle that we've built the parrots. Pretty sure that the entire apartment is just going to be for them at some point. Let's see here.
You weird pet owners.
Like, they're happy. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. I think it's amazing to have 8 parrots that aren't so loud they're screaming and the neighbors can hear them. They've never complained. Do you have any suggestions for somebody who wants to leave a religion?
My thought about leaving religion is this. I mean, when you can shift from one religion to another, and what you've done is just change a different fable that you're going to make believe, a different alternate reality that you're going to pretend. You've just gone from Star Trek to Star Wars, and you've just changed your whole mythology.
Mm.
And religion seems to me to be like largely just the T-shirt that you wear.
Yes.
And religions have a tendency of sharding off into thousands of different denominations of violently conflicting, mutually exclusive belief systems. And they go off in every direction and throw the dart at the wall and then draw the bullseye around the dart that landed and call that the absolute truth.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
somebody else comes along and changes it again. And you know, a lot of people, a lot of Christians in America will brag that their religion never changed. That the King James version of the Bible ain't changed in 300 years. Yeah, well, it was wrong to start with, and it's such a bad translation that biblical scholars won't use it because that it's known to have so many errors and all of that. But the point is, when you have all of these different religions and then they shard off, and so now somebody has gone from the original Orthodoxy and Catholicism schism, and now from Orthodoxy we have the Protestantism thing, and now Protestant is divided into all these different groups. Now we have Southern Baptists and the other Baptists, and now the Seventh-day Adventists, and then the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, and every one of them are pretending as if they're all going back to the original way,
Right.
as God intended. It's never the new way. No, it's always they're all the original, every one of them.
Yes.
No matter how conflicting they are. And they
Yes.
go everywhere imaginable, further and further apart. But if you walk away from faith entirely, away from faith itself, and say, hey, how about not playing a game of make-believe where I just decide that I'm going to believe whatever I'm told to believe, or making up some new bullshit and trying to believe that, because faith is all about making up lies and believing them. What if you want to find out what's true and correct yourself, your own errors, whatever you thought you knew that maybe you don't? Well, now it reverses. So following skepticism and science and so forth, now you start zooming, instead of sharding out every which way, now you're zooming in on the same one and only actual factual truth. Everybody from every religious perspective ends up zeroing in on the same thing. And that's how you know what's real.
I also think that hopping, as opposed to quitting religions in general, I think hopping from one religion to the next is a lot like replacing one vice that you have with a totally different vice. It doesn't really make much of a difference if you're still wasting all of your time and your money and your resources on that vice just because you quit one. So I think let's see what the original question was. Do you have any suggestions for someone who wants to leave a religion? I think they need to be ready to leave religion. I think if you're going to leave a religion, you might as well consider leaving religion in general, because if what you're looking for isn't provided by that religion, it might not be provided by any religion. If you're looking for somebody that promotes a lot of critical thinking skills and things like that, you might not find that in many religions. I know that some people argue that like Buddhism is more about meditating and things like that, but in terms of like Abrahamic religions, I think you're going to have a really tough time finding what it is you're looking for by leaving one religion and going to a different one that depending on what you're looking for, I suppose.
What I've had to explain to religious believers quite often is that, it's not, because they always want to say that I hate Christians or that I hate Muslims or whatever. I hate that, their little demographic. And like, no, it's the faith that is the problem. And that's the problem that all the religions share. There's no truth to any religion. There's no religion that can show that they're any more accurate than all the others.
Right.
And all of them together can't even show that there's a there.
Right.
That there is even a supernatural at all. What we know, what we can show to be true, is that all of the various scriptures for all of the different religions are all man-made mythology. There's nothing verifiably accurate about any of it. If there is anything true, like in the Bible, there really is a country called Ethiopia. There really is a Euphrates River. But these are all trivial at best. There may or may not have been a Solomon and a David, even. But Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, Tower of Babel, Exodus, global flood of Noah's Ark, every one of those things, absolutely, definitely just fictional folklore.
Right.
No truth to it at all bullshit. It's not just that there's no evidence for it, it's that there is profound evidence against every one of them.
Right.
They're all wrong. And faith itself is believing things that are not evidently true nor even possibly true, and being and insisting on believing in them anyway. What kind of insanity is that? So William Jennings Bryan, who was famous in the Scopes monkey trial of 1925, he said when he was running for president 100 or so years ago, he said that if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I would believe it. So even when you have a situation,
you think that is.
Yeah, can you imagine a man swallowing a whale? But it doesn't matter how irrational it is. If you've decided that you're going to go with an authoritarian dictate and you're going to believe what the sacred fables say, even when you know for certain that it can't be true, you've given up all rationality. Right. How is that not a lie?
Absolutely.
And I speak with religious believers regularly, and some of them include my family and friends, and they will all but admit they know that what they're talking about is absolute bullshit, but they're going to believe it anyway. They know it's false, but they're still going to believe it. And proof of that, there was a minister that was on a documentary film where he said that if I were to read in the Bible, somewhere in the Bible, it said that 2 + 2 = 5. Because it's in the Bible, I wouldn't question it. I would believe it. So again, you have mathematic proof that the thing is not true, but you're going to believe it anyway.
Yeah.
That's complete abandonment of rationality, of reason. You don't care what the truth is. If you don't care what the facts are, you don't care what the truth is.
Right. And then there's the argument, what is true belief to begin with? I don't think that if somebody believes something because they're afraid of what happens to them if they don't, I don't believe that's true belief. I don't believe that if you truly believe something, it's only out of fear of hell or whatever you've been told your afterlife is going to have happen to you. If you don't believe, coercion is not true belief. I think true belief is when you've had evidence and the facts that you need and the questions that you need answered with actual, real, tangible evidence to back up and prove to you everything that you need to know in order to make that decision. And you have the opportunity to leave, but you've decided that you've seen enough in order to believe. But that's not what we run into. I feel like when we deal with religious people, what we deal with is, I've been told that if I don't believe this, it's a huge problem. And that if I believe, I go to a good place. And if I don't believe, or if I negate it, or if I claim that it's not enough for me, I go to a bad place. Therefore, I believe. That's not true belief at all. That's coercion.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Somebody told me recently, and I wish I could remember what the actual philosopher's quotation was, when they said, if you don't have the ability to say no, then you really can't say that you said yes. Exactly. So when people say it's not God who sends you to hell, you decide to send you to hell. Well, if you didn't have a choice. Yeah. And I don't have a choice to make believe things that I know can't be true. Not just that I don't have reason to believe that they are true. I have substantial, profound reasons to believe that they are not true. Right. So I'm going to be tortured forever, mercilessly, insanely, by a righteous God of loving wisdom and forgiveness, because he gave me fuck all reason to believe in him. He gave me all the proof that I needed to know that him and his scripture did not exist, and he's going to punish me for that. And you know, the Quran is even more explicit in that. The Quran goes into describing how God decides whether you're going to believe or you don't believe, and he's going to punish you for what he decided you were going to do. You don't even have any choice in the matter. You have absolutely no free will. Now, you can take logically, you can understand that in Christianity, we can't have free will. But in Islam, it's much more explicit that there is no free will. God decides whether you're going to believe. And those that he decides will not believe, he will punish because they didn't believe.
Right. Right.
How insane is all of that?
Right. And not only that, but having grown up Christian myself, there are so many opportunities where you pray for proof, you pray for evidence, you pray for everything that you need. You know, if you just show me this, if you just show me that, people keep asking me for evidence. Please just show me what I need to prove that you're real. And you don't get that. That's almost like a kind of a sick prank to pull on somebody. That's when you have these people begging you for all the evidence they need to prove that you're real, and you can do it, but you just don't. And you're testing their faith, and you're making them feel foolish in front of people who are questioning them. What kind of leader would that even make someone to begin with? And why would you want to follow a leader that makes that example out of you? So there, you know, the opportunity to answer those questions and to prove yourself into existence and not to just kind of goes in line with a lot of the cruelty that we see lined up in the Bible and we see outlined for sure.
So believers have told me that fossils, you know, the dinosaurs never existed. The fossils only exist because God put them here, because God is a liar, apparently, who put the fossils there to test your faith. Because although God knows everything, he still needs to test to find out what he already knows.
Right.
And you need to pray. He understands everything. He can read everybody's mind. He knows the future. He knows every interaction you're ever going to have. He already knows whether you're going to pray and what you're going to pray about, because he already knows what your needs are going to be. And he's already decided whether he's going to answer your prayer, but you need to pray to him.
Yep.
Why?
Yep. And he's planted enough evidence for your opponents to have everything they need in order to argue against you, but he hasn't planted enough evidence to protect you and your beliefs and his existence. Just
this I see as if there is a thing that ultimately leads to the extinction of humanity, it would be religion.
Absolutely. We have
because religion is an example of the irrationality that comes from that faith is a aspect of irrationality, and faith is the most dishonest and auto-deceptive position it is possible to have. Because it's assuming things that are not true, asserting things as fact that are not fact, and then refusing to admit when you're always wrong.
Yes.
Right. So the only way that faith could possibly be any more dishonest than it already is if you become a religious apologist.
Yep. 100%. 100%. We have a caller, so I'm going to let him on. I hope he's still available. Let's see. All right. James, are you there?
I'm here. How you guys doing?
Good.
Doing
How
all
are
right.
you doing?
Doing all right. If you hear my dogs in the background, I apologize. They're in their crates.
Oh, I perfectly understand. I have one that is almost certainly going to go off at some point.
Yep. So what was your question? Let's hear it from you, James.
That can go off at any point.
Okay, James, we're waiting.
Hit us with it.
Sure. Sorry. I didn't quite catch that.
Go ahead. What's your question, sir?
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you guys what led you guys to have the stand of being atheists.
Aron, would you like to start?
You want to?
Perfect.
Yep. Go ahead.
So for me personally, I grew up in the church. I grew up Southern Baptist, and I was always a very curious kid. I was always trying to figure out the whys and the whats and the hows of everything. And I felt like that was encouraged everywhere except in church. I feel like in school, I would get bonus points for being inquisitive. In my extracurriculars, I would get bonus points for finding out answers to questions and newer and better ways to do things. And the one place that I was seemingly discouraged from asking any questions was always church. And even when I was told that I was encouraged to ask questions, the answers that I would get were very circular. They would always just kind of sound very HR style, not really answering anything by the time you've listened to a 5 or 6 minute diatribe. And so that always really confused me because I felt like nobody really had answers from a very young age to the questions that I had. And the older I got, the more I started to get pushback from asking even more in-depth questions. For example, I remember in my early 20s, I was in church and they decided for the day they were going to divide the men and the women into 2 different classrooms. And a woman who was probably, if I had to guess now, she was probably 25, but because in the Christian church, when you're married, you know a lot more than everybody else, even if you've only been married for like 6 months. So she was at the front of the room and she was telling all of us about how it's not a woman's job to preach. It's not a woman's job to try and lead people to the Lord. And that what our job is to support our husbands and sit at the feet of our husbands, and he's going to lead the home church and the religion in the household. And I asked her in that moment, I because I was genuinely being curious. I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I said, what's the difference between what you're doing and preaching? And she said, I don't understand. And I said, well, you're sitting in front of a room full of us at church, teaching us the word of God and how it should be followed and how we can be better Christians. And I'm just curious what's the difference between what you're doing and preaching, since women aren't supposed to preach. And I was asked pretty much to leave. I was made very uncomfortable. I wasn't made to feel like I could stay. Never really got the answer to that question. And that really opened doors for me to understand that not only were people never going to answer my questions, not only were they going to discourage me from ever getting answers, but if I had a good question that gave them the opportunity to answer it and teach everybody else, I was going to be punished for that. And then I did shrooms. And I woke up the next day and ate yeah. So the end.
That's something I've yet to do with shrooms, but I really can't right now because of the kind of work I do. But that's a very interesting that you said about with asking about women preachers, because the background I came from, I was raised in the Jehovah's Witness, and they had women would get up on the stage and give what they called talks, but they would never stand at the podium and give one. Right. There was always 2 of them that would sit at a table, and they always said because they weren't directly teaching, that it was okay for them to do that. But
a woman is supposed to stay silent in the church.
Right. According to the Bible. Yeah. Right. And so, yeah, and I know that different denominations have different ways that they interpret that, but so far, most that I've run into have frowned upon women preaching in the church, or they've had a reason why they disagree with that and they don't have to follow that rule, even though it does say it in the Bible, which I think is very interesting.
Because God's word is unchanging for all people of all times.
Except the New Testament.
For different people in different times.
Right. Except the New Testament, except for modern day changes, except for reality TV. Like there's a million times that suddenly it's a changeable document. But yeah, that was pretty much
the interpretation of the person who's reading it and trying to preach it to you.
Exactly.
So my story was simply this. I don't want to be fooled into believing anything that isn't evidently true. I'm not interested in make-believe. I want to improve my understanding. I don't want to just assume that I know things that I don't really know. If you want to improve your understanding, now there's something different. You have to make sure, first of all, that your prior information is correct, which very often it isn't.
Right. And
so your current perspective will have flaws in it. Nobody's knowledge is perfect. So I have to find the flaws in my current perspective and correct them. And I have to be able to I have to make sure that verify that the changes in my information are themselves correct. And so it matters what the truth is. And that alone by itself, with nothing else, if it matters what the truth is, you're going to be atheist.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I love your saying, the truth is what the facts are. And
Thank
I
you.
just love that. It's so simple.
If I was going to
Yeah.
have a headstone, I would put that on it.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's wild to me when in these talks and these arguments people say, "Well, then what if you found out that this and this and this was actually true? What if this ended up being like evidentiarily true?" I can't say that word. I'm from Arkansas. People always say like, "What if the science changes and you find out things that you always believed end up not being true?" And I say, "Then I would believe that." Like the people are shocked when you say you would change what you've always said in order to believe the evidence. They're like, that's not how that works. And you're like, it is outside of church. It is.
Yeah, I tell them I don't need to have the belief if I have the truth.
And then the truth, the truth doesn't change, but what you think is the truth clearly can. I mean, every lie is sold as the truth with a capital T, right? So there's a whole lot of people who are saying mutually exclusive truths. And so you get to the point where you realize that if you even use the word truth at all, it sounds like a lie.
Right.
So you stop using those kind of words as much as you can. So when you say that anything is true, you shouldn't say that anything is true until you can show the truth of it, right? You have to be able to show the facts backing up the position. And that was one of the problems that I had when I would ask believers, why do you believe? Because it doesn't matter what you believe. It really doesn't. I don't care. I don't give a fuck what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that determines whether I should believe it too.
Right.
And if by believe you mean make believe, that you just mean pretend, well, then I don't care. I'm not into fantasy. I'm into fact, not fiction. But I was alarmed to find that people believe what they want to believe because they want to believe it, or for completely irrational things. I need to believe in hell because I'm afraid going to hell. What? But if you didn't believe in hell, then you wouldn't be afraid of going there, because But it's difficult to reach people who have no concept of rationality.
Right. And when you apply the same exact behavior, the idea that when people say, this is actually new facts now, we've discovered this. And a lot of times people who are religious, especially Christians, like evangelicals and fundamentalists, they say, no, we're going to keep doing things the way we've always done them. We don't believe that. We don't believe that. If you apply that exact same behavior to literally anything else, everybody seems to agree that it's unhinged, right? So at one point they came out and they said, hey, you need to wear sunscreen, otherwise you might get skin cancer. If everybody had been like, no, absolutely not, we're not going to do that, I'm going to continue to bake in the sun, I'm going to put Crisco on my body, you'd be like, that person seems a little bit unhinged, right? If they said, hey, turns out we thought smoking was healthy, smoking isn't healthy anymore. If somebody was like, no, just for the sake of proving you wrong, I'm going to smoke a pack a day just cause, you're like, that only impacts you, by the way, just so you know, but that seems a little extreme. And yet, when you apply that exact same logic to people who are refusing to pay attention to science and facts and evidence, and they're instead holding on like with like an iron fist, an iron grip to whatever it was they believed before because they can't possibly change, it just seems a little odd, a little unhinged.
Yeah, let me quote Steve Perry for a moment. Here's the source of the problem. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. We are taught culturally that faith is a virtue. It's absolutely not. It's the worst thing for humanity. It is a complete vice. Assuming things that are not true, assuming things without reason and defending them against all reason. If you vote for a judge, or a political leader on the basis of that they're firm in their faith, then you are voting someone who is unreasonable and who has already judged your case, regardless of the evidence. They've judged you on gut instinct. They just don't know it because they think it's God talking to them.
Right. And James, did you have a question?
Oh yeah. No, I was going to say that I always hate when somebody, because I talk to a bunch of Christians myself, and they'll say, "Well, you got to believe first, and then you'll get the Holy Spirit, and then God will reveal Himself." I'm like, well, why should I have to believe in something irrational first? Why can't I just have the facts of the matter first? And they just can't seem to grasp that disconnect because of their belief system when you just want the facts. And it's just
because there are those who want to believe and those who want to understand. And if you're in the want to understand category, then the excuse that because I said so, that's why, isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also interesting that the same exact people who say you have to believe first are the same kind of people who they're not going to pay their mechanic up front, right? They're not going to send somebody money over the internet who hasn't proven they have the product they're buying. They recognize that paying for a lot of things up front will get you scammed, and paying for a lot of things up front will leave you in the lurch and will be bad for you. But at the same time, when it comes to faith and religion and their eternal salvation, they're willing to accept the idea that they should just believe up front. I guess I'm just going to go on Craigslist and believe everybody who's selling things up front and just pay them all the money right now and just believe they're going to send the item to me and they're not going to scam me. It's just, again, it just goes back to that whole, the same logic when applied in other areas of life doesn't make any sense. And so many people seem to agree. But then when you take that logic and you apply it to what should arguably be the most important thing, is their eternal salvation and whether or not they make it to heaven or hell, all logic seems to go out the window. It's very
I'm proud to
interesting.
say that I'm a friend of Ivan Stang, the guy who invented the Church of the Subgenius, also known as the Church of Bob. And they promise eternal salvation or triple your money back.
Or triple your money back. You heard it here first, folks. James, did that answer your question, or did you have any other questions?
No, that was it. You guys got anything for me?
How did you become an atheist?
Oh, okay. Well, so I said earlier I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I left that religion because of the big child abuse scandals they got going on. But then
The Jehovah's Witnesses have that too?
Oh, yeah.
No. According to them, they don't. But really, for me, it really wasn't a matter of me diving into the Bible and reading it. I actually started listening to shows like Atheist Experience and found channels like Aron Ra's and other channels, and I started listening to all the debates and the conversation back and forth, and I really earnestly listened. I sincerely wanted to hear what both sides of the argument had to say. And every time, I can't think of one time where I felt like a Christian or any other religion made an argument that was valid and that was logical. And I'm just like, for me, it just kind of just shed off really easy, because I'm like, well, they can't seem to defend their arguments with any real solid basis. I don't believe in this anymore, and it just went away.
Yeah, I mentioned that no religion has any truth to it. There's no truth to any religion. That none of them can show. And when I say truth, of course, I'm talking about showing what the truth is, what the facts of the matter is, not stuff that you just have to believe, right? The circular argument where you have to believe first. That's the question begging fallacy. The circular reasoning routing back to the circular argument routing back to the assumed conclusion. That is ubiquitous in all religions. And I forgot where I was going with that, so I'm going to let it go.
Yeah. Well, James,
I mean, that was one of the biggest things, because especially with Christianity, well, the Bible's true because the Bible says it's true. That's like, okay, well, you can't.
Is the Bhagavad Gita true because it says it's true too?
So why should I believe it?
The Bhagavad Gita is older than Bible, and it says it's true.
Yep.
I mean, with that kind of reasoning, you might as well believe Spider-Man is true, because, they'll try to say, well, it has historical things in it that are true. Okay, Spider-Man's based in New York. That's a real city. So is Spider-Man real?
Yeah, in the third Indiana Jones movie, he goes to Germany and bumps into Adolf Hitler. There really is a Germany. There really was an Adolf Hitler. That means Indiana Jones is true.
Indiana Jones is true.
Oh, excellent. I believe in Indiana now.
What? Well, James, thank you so much for calling in. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
Yes, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Y'all have a wonderful night.
You too.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye. Let's see here. There we go. And then I have a question here, which I already have an answer for, but I'm curious. Somebody says, my family is pressuring me to have a religious wedding, and I really do not want to go that route. I feel if I don't, they will have a fit and not go. What do you think would be the best way to go? Sounds like you'd have a cheaper wedding, in my opinion. if
Yeah.
you just didn't. Just have it how you want. Have a secular wedding. If they don't come, they don't come. They're literally threatening to
If you
save
want
you
to
a
have
bunch
a
of money.
religious wedding, hire me. I can represent the Satanic Temple. I'll give you a religious wedding.
Right, right. And if you're in a position where maybe they're paying for it or you're financially beholden to your family for whatever reason, it's a
All right,
little more
hold on.
difficult.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah, you're good. Because I understand that some people still live at home or they're beholden to their family financially or whatever. Maybe they're still on their insurance or something like that. I say do whatever you want. Do your wedding how you want your wedding to be. Do you want to remember it as the wedding that your parents dreamed of or your grandma dreamed of or your friends dreamed of? Or do you want it to be the wedding that you always wanted? Worst case scenario, they don't go. And then you save money. You don't have as many seats to fill, and at least the memories you have are a wedding that you want. But at the end of the day, it's like, where does it end? They get to control the wedding. Great. Do they get any say in the marriage? Do they get any say in anything else? Are they going to want to control how you raise your kids if you ever have kids? Where it stops here. The buck stops here, because that way you don't have to worry about it escalating anywhere else. So however you want it to be, have your secular, non-religious wedding, in my opinion.
I apologize. My mother is in the hospital at the moment.
Oh.
The hospital called. I didn't realize it was a hospital. I'm just getting a number, and almost all of my calls are scam calls, right?
Yeah.
So I hang up. Exact same number calls back a second later. I hang up again as soon as it called. Exact same number calls again.
I'm glad they
and
called
then I
back.
realized that it's the hospital. It is, in fact, the hospital. But they're asking me a stupid question. Why? Why would you call back 3 times for that? I'm now thinking, okay, is this going to be severe? I had to put on hold put on mute to talk to the hospital now. Did the doctor talk to you? Did they tell you No, they didn't. Okay, well, we'll talk to you tomorrow then.
You should tell them to call into the show if they want to talk to you again. They should call this number. They can ask us anything.
Yeah. I apologize that thing just happened completely unnecessarily.
That is totally fine. Totally fine. We've had rats, we've had hospitals, we've had all sorts of things. What next?
Well, we had the dogs already. I kicked them out.
Well, and the funny part was I usually bring my parrots on live stream, and I didn't this time because I was like, I don't know if they'll want to see animals on the live stream. And now I know they would have. They would have loved to see animals on the live stream.
I can bring out some snakes.
Opportunity. Yeah, there you go. That works. All right. So somebody asked, after deconstruction, where do you find community now outside of church? Honestly, in my personal experience, I actually never found community in church. I always felt like I was an outsider. I always felt like I was the odd kid out. I never felt like I really fit in at all. And I don't know for sure if that had anything to do with my eventual deconstruction, or maybe just because I had ADD and I didn't know it till I was 30. Not sure. Could be a lot of things.
Yeah. I had that same experience going to a family reunion.
Right.
I don't belong here.
Right. Exactly. So I've actually found a better community since leaving church. And you ask, where do you meet people? Honestly, virtually doing shows like this or being a part of communities like this, I've met way more people that are kind, that are giving, that are personable, that have introduced me to other people than I ever did through the church. You can join, but I'm not an athletic person at all, but maybe you join a sports league, maybe you join some kind of social club. I would honestly argue that you might have an easier time making friends outside of church than in church, because nobody is morally policing you. Nobody is making sure that you're doing whatever you have to do in church to look good. They're not trying to out church you or out Christian you or out pious you. So you might actually have an easier time, depending on where you live, finding people who find you more approachable now that you're no longer religious.
When I was 20, I joined a LARPing group, and then for the next decade of my life, everybody I knew was part of that group, and it wasn't a small group.
Yep.
So I could travel all over the country and meet new people who were also part of that group. That was my community.
Right.
And now that I've gotten into political activism, I find that there's this huge shift where all of my friends now are in that movement, including some of the old friends that I had from back in the day. They're in that movement too.
Yep.
Because we watch what's happening to our country. We watch our recession back against what the founding fathers declared, what they wanted, against secularism and so forth. And we find that we are rallying together on that front. And so
Absolutely. And
So I go to conferences and conventions and rallies and that sort of thing, and that's where I meet my friends, the people that I know dearly. They're all part of that movement.
Absolutely. I teach stand-up comedy classes, and so far, every class I've ever taught, and I've been doing it for 7 years, they've all remained friends after the class. They've started group chats, they've hung out, they've gotten brunch, they've gone to shows together, they've traveled together. I've never seen a connection quite like people who do a comedy class. I'm not quite sure how that works every time, but so far they've
How do I
all
attend
stayed
your
friends.
comedy class?
You can either talk to the Second City about doing a virtual class, or you can come to Nashville and take one at Third Coast Comedy Club in person.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I do them on Zoom sometimes, but that's on occasion. But yeah, so it doesn't have to be anything big, giant, any huge commitment. It can be an 8-week comedy class. It can be a group that you find on Facebook. It can be a virtual club of some kind.
You know, it's funny how people talk about, you know, the value of religion is that it is community, right? So I do the LARPing hobby, and now I have community there. I do the activism thing. I have community there. You see this wall of snake racks behind me. The herpetological community are now my community as well. And so we do a lot of conferences and herp conventions, and I see the same people at all these different ones. And so now we're starting to hang out with that group. It's funny how people just tend to socialize based on practically any common interest.
Literally, I'm on so many parrot forums. It turns out Tennessee has more than one parrot forum, and you can just make friends that way. I've met them in person. I've gotten birds from it. It's amazing. Get birds is what I'm saying. Get birds and you'll make a ton of friends. Just invest.
Snakes, same.
Snakes, yep. And they'll keep away the people that you don't want around you, right? Anybody who doesn't like snakes, you don't need them over. Somebody says, I will be shunned by my community and family if I come out. What should I do?
Shh.
I mean, the first thing I would ask myself is, do you consider it true love and true devotion and true familial bond if they can just kick you out because you no longer agree with what they're saying, right? Like, are these people that you truly want to have a long-term relationship with, or do you need to stay in some kind of relationship with them in order to survive?
I would add that if it's not this catalyst, it'll be the next one.
Right.
My own family was able to tolerate that I was different than them, because that was always a problem. As I said, I didn't fit in a family reunion.
Yeah.
Then they were able to tolerate that I didn't believe in God. But when I didn't worship the orange God, that was it.
The end.
Cut all ties.
Get rid of it. Yeah, it goes kind of back to the wedding one. It's like, at what point does it end? That's not going to be the only one. They're not going to take total control of the wedding and then just cease control of the rest of your life. The same community that's going to shun you if you don't believe whatever it is they tell you to believe, which again isn't real belief. If you're just doing it because you're afraid of losing everyone, then it's not going to end there. They're going to want control of whatever family you choose to raise. They're going to want control over the jobs that you take. They're going to want a say in whoever you choose to date. Like, it's never going to end. It doesn't end there. So is that something, are these people so important that you're willing to have them control the rest of your life? Or perhaps maybe you're better off branching off and starting over somewhere fresh where you don't need their input and their impact in your life? And then...
Yeah, my little brother changed his phone number so that I could never call him again.
Wow.
Yep, because you don't criticize my president.
Oh, boy. We should give him this number, though. Be like, hey, it's not my number. Call this number. Callin.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No. But honestly, like, you know, there's that joke you hear about online where people are like, oh, I love when the trash takes itself out. Not that I'm calling anybody trash, but like, when problems deal with themselves by cutting themselves out of your life, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think that might be somewhat of the best thing they could possibly do for you, depending on how toxic they are to your life. And maybe one day they'll come back. Somebody says, how does an atheist make a decision between right and wrong? I don't. I just do wrong. I live to do wrong all the time. The laws are helpful. If it's illegal, I don't do it on purpose.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about the Satanic Temple. They have the 7 tenets that imply that the law can be wrong. Just because it's a law doesn't necessarily mean that it's moral or right. And it's not advocating that you should break the law. It's advocating that you can correct the law. And it's one of the arguments against authoritarianism, which is a big deal. The United States right now is really concerned with the left versus the right, and nobody knows what the hell either one of those words mean, because most of the things that most Americans hate, they don't know what the words mean. They hate socialism, they don't know what it is. They hate evolution, they don't know what it is. They
Yes, people fear what they don't know, and they just decide that they hate it because they don't know enough about it. It's wild to me.
And some of the things they hate, I'm against too, but I know what they are.
And you know why you don't like them. Yeah.
And I know why I don't like them. Yes, exactly.
Anybody who knows exactly why they hate my guts is more than welcome to hate my guts, but at least know why. At least know what it is that I did that pissed you off. We have another caller here. I'm going to let them in. There we go. Oh, they disappeared.
Hello.
Oh, perfect. There they are. Hey, how's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well.
Me.
Do you pronounce your name Teo?
Yes, I am Teo el Ateo. This is the name in Spanish, but if you want to call me Teo, it's okay.
Okay,
I'm
perfect.
comfortable with Teo, though.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Sorry?
And so, what was your question?
Oh, yeah, well, I saw that Aron is now in this political activism thing, and finally I can find you, sir. I want to ask you, because maybe you don't know me, but I'm kind of obsessed with the harms of religion. And I would like to know, are you doing this political activism because you also see how religion is creating a lot of harms through politics? Or have I been misguided by my preconceptions about you, sir?
I consider myself an anti-theist because I see religion as having a net negative impact against humanity. Politics is strangely even less rational than religion, if that makes any sense. And the funny thing is that religion and politics are both making moral judgments, and they're making moral decisions, or decisions that they think are moral or that are based on some concept of morality, but are actually grossly immoral. In the state of Texas, where I live, for example, my state... And this is an important background. I'm an old guy. I'm 60 years old. So I grew up in a very different generation.
You're 60 years old?
I'm 60.
I had no idea. Wow. I literally didn't know. That's wild.
Just excessive immaturity will maintain your youth for a while. So when I was young, they used to brag about all the things that made the United States better than anyone else. You know, like the United States will not negotiate with terrorists until we did. Mm-hmm. And the United States will not torture prisoners until we did. And the United States is the only country that is a meritocracy, where it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, what your nationality is, what your religion is. It matters what you can do. What is your performance ability? And that changed because of legislation that targets certain people. And it used to be that we were better than every other country because we could travel about within our own borders and we didn't have to show our papers, until here in Texas, they tried to pass the show your papers bill, where they could just seize anybody on a college campus who looked, let's say, not white, and just grab them. And if they don't have their papers on them to show that they're in the country legally, then they could be whisked off to jail until somebody could prove that they're here legally. So we have become the very thing that we used to brag about not being. And now the government, especially in my state, is trying to target its own people. Whether you're white, whether you're Christian, whether you're cisgender and heterosexual, whatever, they've got all of these different parameters on different types of laws to target and isolate the different groups. There's the Merry Christmas bill that where teachers used to have to keep their religious perspectives to themselves appropriately. They're now encouraged to out themselves, which of course works if you're in the dominant Protestant class, but if you're in a minority religion, if you're Hindu, or if you're Sikh, or worst of all, if you're atheist, well, now you're being outed. And they're writing all of these laws that are going against everything that used to make America pretty great.
Yep.
And it's all under the guise of make America great again.
Yeah.
Like going back to when it used to suck. Because America used to suck.
No. Oh, yeah. As a guy from South America, for a long time, I believed in the American dream. And now, whenever I go with the guys at nonprofits and I'm there, I always end up with America is scaring me. I used to want to go there really badly, and now I couldn't go there and live there, even if I was paid, because I've seen how these Christian groups are taking over the country. They are taking rights away of people. It's awesome. It's not awesome. It's awful and terrible how discrimination has been increasing. Now people are against education, so a lot of terrible things that you should know about your history, children are not learning it. Me, as a South American guy, I think I know much more about the history of the USA than a teenager from the USA who is not being taught about all the awful things that have been happening over there. That's why
Then politicians here, probably.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a sad fact that more children have been molested by Republican Christian politicians in public bathrooms than have ever been molested by trans people anywhere.
Yeah.
But that's not something they're going to teach you.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's this idea where they say, do what we want, believe what we want. And you say, I'm so sorry, I haven't seen enough evidence to believe that. And they're like, oh yeah? Well, how about this? I'm going to change the laws, so you have to do what we want. And you say, I still don't believe it. This seems a little strange. And they say, oh yeah? Well, here's even more punishment for not believing. Now do you believe? And they're surprised that you still don't believe it. They're surprised that you don't just go, okay, you got me. I believe it now, actually, that it's illegal to not believe it. Thank you. That's not how belief works, right? That's not how belief works at all. It's just wild. It's just wild. But you're absolutely right. You probably do know a lot more about actual true American history than the average American, honestly.
And this is by design, because like the Texas Board of Education, just as an example, has been trying to do what we called the whitewash, where for a long time they just wanted to remove all ethnic references, all authority figures, all noble people that you could look up to in American history, so that it looks as if the only people who ever did anything important were straight, white, Protestant Christian men.
Yes. Yep, because the women stayed quiet, just as they're supposed to.
And it's not just the women. There's no non-white. There certainly are no non-Christian. Anybody ever did anything important. We just won't mention any of those people.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's like Texas and Florida, they are fighting over who can destroy their educational system the sooner, the faster. And last example that I would like to mention, I still cannot believe that the episode of The Simpsons, when people were complaining about the David statue, it became true, and it's literally people complaining about children learning. I couldn't believe it. I still have a hard time believing that actually happened, and it's so sad and terrible.
I'm alarmed. I'm alarmed when Christians tell me that progress is bad. That was the first thing that set me off. I don't know. I was maybe 8 to 10 years old when somebody told me that progress is bad. How the fuck is progress bad? How is making things better somehow worse? But that's their perspective. And then the argument that I get from Christians regularly, almost daily, is what's wrong with lying? Why can't I lie if I want to? Why does something have to be true before I believe it? Why can't I believe things that are not true if it makes me happy? Why? How can you believe something that you know is not true?
Is that is that belief, or is that just delusion?
It's make believe.
Yes.
So when they tell you, when we put in these other laws, do you believe now? What they mean is, do you make believe now? Will you now bow and give consent? Okay, I believe this thing I don't really believe, but I'm now legally obliged to say that I believe.
Yes. It's utterly wild. Utterly wild.
Well, that's how the Muslim religion kind of spread so much, because you were not allowed to say that you didn't believe in Allah or that you were not a Muslim. You could.
Well, there's this thing called the Inquisition. The Christianity did it an awful lot too. Christianity spread
yeah,
itself
no,
by the sword
that
and
is-
by So during, like in Europe, for example, when they took over pagan countries, they did an awful lot of deals where the church would offer, say, Vikings, we'll give you all this land if you convert to Christianity. And so all you have to do is say, okay, I'm a Christian now. All right. And I get all this land. Okay. And then when they go to war against the Christians, they're still fighting for their old gods. Because that doesn't cause belief, that just causes somebody to say that they believe.
Right.
Because all religion is based entirely on lies.
Right. Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Nitty, who did a super chat for us, which I really appreciate. He said, "You guys rule." Nitty, we love you. I know you pop up in a lot of my chats, and you're fantastic. Thank you so much for donating your time and your money. We appreciate you. But yeah, absolutely. And then you look at the laws where, especially in the United States, they used to say, do this thing and we'll give you land. And you're like, and they're like, oh, by the way, and if you don't, we will take the land that you currently have. And everyone's like, oh, great. Yeah, we will go with whatever you want. And that's not belief. I feel like I'm just preaching to the choir, ironically. It's just not belief. Did we answer your question, Teo?
Well, I guess I would like to direct this to ask this directly to Aron. Sir, with your political activism, do you plan to fight the harms of religion, which is my biggest concern, because here in South America we tend to copy everything from the USA, and I'm really, really scared because of the road that you're taking over there.
Do I plan to fight what religion?
Harms of religion?
The
With
harms of
political
religion.
activism. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think religion is nothing but harm. It's just lies. That's it. That's all. There's nothing else to religion than lies, period. And I think it's all entirely harmful. Religious people argue with me all the time that there's some trivial placebo effect that somehow justifies all the evil that it does to every believer. Everybody that comes out of Christianity tells me later that, okay, when they came out of religious belief, they can't believe how stupid they were, how they've completely changed their perspective, how they're no longer as hateful or resentful or bitter or prejudiced against other people. They're much more tolerant than they used to be. They're much more curious than they used to be. They talk about how religion stifles their minds. And when they come out of it, they find themselves wanting to go back to college. They find themselves completely open to new things they never would have considered anymore. Religion is absolutely abhorrent to every aspect of human being.
I think he's asking what's a political move that he can make to fight against the harms of religion, specifically a political move.
Well, I don't know what your strategy is. Mine is to call out the fact that there's no truth to it. Believers hate nothing more than the burden of proof. And what they always want to do is shift that burden of proof onto you, so that when they can make all kinds of bullshit assertions and you have to prove that it's wrong. No, that's not how that works. You have to substantiate it. And making an unsubstantiated claim is tantamount to lying. You need to repeat that over every time they bring it up. Somebody told me today that I'm a child of God. Well, there evidently is no God. So yours is an unsupported assertion of impossible absurdity. You can't say things like that. That's called lying. But I have Hitchens' razor, which allows that anything that is asserted without evidence may be dismissed without evidence, especially when it's not even fucking possible. There's no precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that any such possibility exists. You're just pulling that out of your ass. And my favorite quote from Abraham Lincoln, which is another one of those things when I discovered it like a year ago, it became my favorite slogan ever. He said, it is an established maxim in morals that he who makes an assertion without knowing whether it is true or false is guilty of falsehood. And the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him. I love that. Thank you. That's the motto I've always lived by. You can't say shit is true if you can't show the truth of it. You don't get to just make up shit and call it truth. And we used to have a culture wherein if somebody said things that if somebody made up their own statistics, pulled them out of their ass and just said things are true that are not, we'd be able to call them on it. Can you show me? Verify that that's true. And if you can't, they're a liar. It doesn't matter. If you said something's true, you can't show that it's true. You just said that it's true and you can't back it up. You're a liar. That's it. And it used to be that lying is bad. Not so much anymore, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think also something that would really help is
Oh.
if we stop shaming people who run for office for not being religious, or we stop rewarding people for on their platform touting their religion as one of the things they're so proud of, whether they're Protestant, whether they're Catholic. I think we've made a huge mistake when we allow politicians to make their religion such a huge part of their platform. If we start allowing more secular individuals to make it to the bigger and more main stages, we start voting for them more often and to make it further in. I know it'll take years and years to make big change, but if we start voting for them more often, if we start fighting for during political campaigns, taking as much religion out of the equation as possible, maybe not allowing them to put it on banners, on posters, to pray before their rallies and things like that. And again, I know it'll take years before that is something that is pushed hard enough to actually make change, but I think the biggest thing that we can do is stop praising people simply because of the religion they claim that they're a part of whenever they're running for president or for office, and instead leaning more towards what do they actually believe, who are the secular people we can vote for, who are the atheist people we can vote for that actually are more concerned about our lives right now on earth versus our lives after death and heaven and hell and all that. I don't really care what my president thinks about heaven and hell. I want to make sure that he knows how to run the country today. And I think that's like a huge step as well. We need to stop, especially in America, we need to stop rewarding people and being like, well, I'm voting for them because they're religious, they're Christian, they pray. Here's a picture of them praying with their family. That shouldn't, separation of church and state should still be immense, and it's not. They overlap so much.
I don't want
that it's
anybody
almost...
to have the nuclear. I'm sorry.
No.
I don't want anybody to have the. I don't want anyone to have the nuclear codes who thinks that a snake ever talked.
Yep. And you love snakes.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. You're both amazing. I hope to see more of you around, and yeah, keep doing the good job. Both of you are great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling in. It was great talking to you.
Now, I would ask, while I appreciate that we have like-minded people, and that's always good, it makes for a boring show. If you disagree with anything that me or the host are saying, come tell me.
Give us a call. And we've got a chat here. Somebody says, we've seen a rise in non-religious ideologies, anti-science, conspiracy theorists. What do you think is the equivalent mechanism to faith within those groups? I think it's the same thing. I think the same faith that they're applying to the religion they follow is the exact same kind of faith they're applying to why it is they choose to be anti-vax or something like that. Because they just choose to think one thing and never change. They don't care about evidence. They don't care about supporting theories. In fact, they demonize evidence if it ever comes up because it goes against what they want to think. I honestly don't think it's different at all. I think the exact same kind of rhetoric they use, or the exact same kind of thought process they use when they decide that they're never going to be anything but biblical followers or religious people. That's the exact same idea they put towards anything else. Vaccines, political parties. Yeah.
I can always give you the reason why I would change my mind.
Yes.
The thing that would change my mind, where if I'm wrong, and it matters whether, I don't want to believe things that are not true. So if I do currently believe something that is not true, I want someone to correct me. I want you to show me that I'm wrong. Show me how I'm wrong. And I'll give you ways to show that I am wrong. Yes. Religious believers already know they're wrong, and they don't care. They want to believe what they know is not true. They're going to believe it anyway.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I just want to take one quick moment to talk about the other shows that is available on Skeptic Haven. If you've enjoyed what you've been watching so far, we actually have shows almost every day of the week. For example, on Wednesdays, we have Secular Soapbox with Apostasy and Baphomental. Then on Thursdays, we have the Sunny Spot with Sunny Shell and Bumble Bree. And then on Saturdays, there's the Global Atheist and Women Atheists Unload. I'm one of the hosts there as well. So if you've enjoyed this show, we've got them all the time. And also don't forget to check us out on Patreon as well. And you have a Patreon too, Aron, right?
I do. Patreon.com/ARONRA. I need all the help I can get. This is my full-time gig, has been since 2014. When I had a regular job, until 2014, I was working for a corporate entity. If you've ever seen the Incredibles, the cartoon movie, The Incredibles, I had Mr. Incredible's job. The little old lady wouldn't be in the cubicle with me. She'd be on the phone, but my job was to deny insurance coverage. That was when they did the zoom out and showed the office, I'm like, oh crap, that's where I work.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
It's exactly that. When I worked there, I was prohibited by time constraints. I could do virtually nothing for my activism. And they kept tightening the leash so that I could do less and less year after year. And it wasn't until I finally lost that job and got into Patreon instead that I could actually accomplish fuck all. So the fact that I've been able to do all of these rallies and conventions and protests and all of these things that I've been able to do has been entirely because I've had patron support. Mm-hmm. So please help. And I am striving to earn every donation.
Yeah, it's almost exactly what we said to Teo a minute ago, supporting the people that believe what you believe and supporting the people that are out here spreading the message that you like to consume. You know, lots of people love to watch these videos and participate in these streams, and maybe they would never have a channel themselves. Supporting the people that have the channel, supporting the people that are going to the conventions and putting themselves on live streams and videos and podcasts and things like that, getting the message out there is just as important. That's a way to show support and kind of fight what you can against a lot of religious movements, for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Let's see here. Check out some additional questions we have. Somebody says, evil is allowed to exist since A, God gave humans limited free will to choose good or evil. B, without evil, there would be no way to know what is good and right. Is this I don't know if that's a question or a statement. I disagree.
I think that morality is largely objective. Mm-hmm. I think if you have adequate understanding, if everybody had adequate understanding, I think then morality would be objective. But to large degree, even with inadequate understanding, we all realize that if I walk up to some stranger at the bus stop and kick them in the shins, that's immoral. It's immoral and there's a reason why it is immoral. It's not just that some things are immoral and some things are not. We have to arbitrarily decide, or we have to ask some authoritarian opinion whether it is. There's reasons that determine whether it's moral or not. Mm-hmm. And so there is an objective understanding that if we're causing unnecessary harm or suffering, that is immoral. And if we're doing something to promote a better health or success or something in some other person, that's definitely moral. Right, we're advocating for the benefit of one or more people. That's a moral thing to do, if it's not also contradicting the other aspect. And when we have an objective standard that we universally understand, like everybody everywhere knows, lying is bad. Every religion lies as a necessity. If we couldn't lie, there would be no religion. Religion is entirely a lie that makes up excuses for lying.
And then tells you not to lie.
And then tells you not to lie. Claims to be the absolute truth. Because every lie claims to be the absolute truth, doesn't it? But we understand objectively that lying is bad. God didn't have to tell us a lie is bad. With or without God, we know that lying is bad. And there's a number of other things that we can tell are moral or immoral, and we know why they're moral or immoral. And when we have the understanding and the way to define and determine whether what is the criteria to determine whether something is moral or immoral, once we have that, well, then we can evaluate God and discover that, oh shit, he's an asshole.
Yes. So many people say every day in these chats, like, I would rather say that I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God than believe in the God that we're supposed to believe as he is in the Bible. The violent, petty, mean, cruel man who, one, published the first chapter and then I guess decided to take away all of his rules for the second one or amend them, and yet for whatever reason can't make a third version. There's no amendments allowed to be made after that. I've always wondered that. I'm like, if he allowed there to be a first version and a second version, why can't there be a third version? There's not even a verse about that. It doesn't even talk in the Bible about why you can't make a third version. I vote that we do. Somebody said, how do you not feel depressed over the years you've wasted in religion? I find the longer I'm away from it, the more upset I'm getting. 25 wasted years. I feel like that's a sunk cost fallacy. You would be angrier if you wasted 26, if you wasted 27. I'm actually grateful for the time that I had in the church because it's made me understand so much more about why I don't believe it. Instead of just saying, I don't believe in God, I say, for these particular reasons that I was told I should, there's not enough evidence to support these specific points. And I also know what people are going to say to me when they're having a conversation about why I should. I feel like I'm armed from both sides. I'm armed from the Christian side and the atheist side. So while I totally understand why somebody might be upset why they spent 25 years that they feel they wasted, if anything, I feel like that might give you the tools that you need to, one, help others not waste 25 years, to completely at least know why it is you do and do not believe the certain things that you do and do not believe, which is more than a lot of people can say why they do believe certain things. And also just be glad that you didn't spend 26.
I'd also like to throw something else out there for people to consider. It's a little thought experiment that I have. It's like, imagine that as one of the survival issues that we have embedded in our minds. You know, that old adage that when you die, your whole life flashes before your eyes. Well, what if you could change it? What if you have this where you get to experience the entirety of your life over again, or from any point? You just pick a point that was an important pivotal moment in your life. And as you are dying, you can, if you want, you can wake up at that moment and live from then on, making new decisions and following a new course, knowing all that you know now. If everybody says, if I go back to living then and knowing what I know now, and that's a nice fantasy, but with a lot of things, if you explore it too much, you realize it's not. Right. And I'm 60 years old. We brought up. If I were to go back to when I was 20, 1/3 of my life ago, and just live the whole last 40 years over again, if I had that opportunity, would I? And I realized that a lot of who I am is actually based on mistakes that I made.
Yes.
That things, and I'm not saying that I'm proud of these things. I've done shit that I'm glad that people are not upset with me for to this day. Because when I think about the things that I said and did and believed, especially the latter one, I was the attitudes that I had. You were a very different person from 20.
100%.
To 40. You'd be amazed what a different person you are. I was an ignorant, arrogant asshole.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. 100%. But if I could go back and live it again, I wouldn't be that guy.
Right.
But then by the time I get to here, I wouldn't be this guy.
Right. Yes. 100%. I tell people all the time, the only reason I'm who I am today is because there were patient enough people to deal with my ignorant bullshit for like the first 23 years. And they were patient and they asked me the right questions. And then one day I woke up and I understood that I didn't have answers to those questions. And I started exploring what that would be. And then the next thing you know, here you are. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
If you could go back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you. When you go back, people who think that their lives are being judged, a heaven and hell kind of a situation. Imagine that you have this on the moment of your death where your life is flashing before your eyes. You get an opportunity where you realize that you could live your entire thing, or you could experience in hyperspeed. It won't feel like hyperspeed. It'll feel like you're living 40 years all over again. But you get to experience all of this over, and you won't be judged for it because this is a fantasy. So whether you're already going to heaven or hell or whatever, you won't be judged for this. You can be as evil as you want to, and it won't matter. Nobody's going to care. But you know what? You're not going to be. You get to live your 40 years over again. You're not going to be evil. You're not going to be raping and killing and destroying and vandalizing things. You're not.
Nope.
You're going to have the wisdom of your years, and you're going to be a better person than ever you were. You won't have made those mistakes that define who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But now think about that. If you know that now, you know that if you're not judged, you know for certain, just somehow innately, you know that this part doesn't count. Why are you being a good person? Because you know how to be now, and you know why you should be.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to do.
Right. It's impossible to know what kind of things you don't want to be involved in or what kind of things you don't want to accept as part of you if you haven't tried them before and hated them, right? You'll never know for sure unless you're like, oh, I was that asshole. I don't want to keep being that asshole, as opposed to what could have been if I had once ever tried being that asshole. Who knows? Right.
And that's another reason that forgiveness is really important too.
Yes.
One of the things I like about the Satanic Temple's 7 tenets is because whereas a lot of people will be upset with the left, which they don't even know what the left is, but they'll be upset with the left because the left is cancel culture. The 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple, one of them talks about how to forgive. So like if you've done something wrong and you're able to admit that, hey, you know what, that was a pretty stupid and fucked up thing that I did. I should do something about trying to make that right. You've acknowledged that it was wrong. You're trying to make it right. That's what forgiveness is based on.
Yes. Forgiveness is huge. Absolutely. And I also think that forgiveness is one of the ways that we can improve as a society as a whole. We're so focused on, this person said this or this person did this, get rid of them, throw them out, no matter how long ago it was, no matter how different they are. I think if we allow people forgiveness and room for error, we would actually find that as a whole, we could make a lot more progress and change because we wouldn't be arguing the whole time about who did what a long time ago. We would instead be basing them on who they are today and what they're like today and what they stand for today.
Unless we're in a relationship, in which case I'm going to hear about every fucked up thing I did 5 years ago every time we have a new argument. I don't know.
That's true. Touche. Don't weaponize my own weapons against me. How dare you? How dare you? That's my tactic. Phil says, William Lane Craig recently said that he should believe in God if there is even a 1 in a million chance of it being true. Your thoughts on this? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, and
Nope.
what was it? Not Occam's, but what was it? I forgot that Pascal's wager. The notion that you should believe in God to like hedge your bets. One of the things that Pascal didn't take into account, being a European as he was that he had no idea about Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, or Islam. So if you can dedicate your life to Jesus, you can be abstinent, renunciate, you can forsake all of the sins of the flesh and the pleasures of this life, and suffer through this meager existence for the great, seeking the great reward in the next life and all of that. But if you think that Jesus is the Son of God, you're going to Muslim hell. And the Muslim God is going to punish you mercilessly, savagely, forever, without any consideration, because there's no such thing as nuance. Everything's binary, isn't it? It's all this or it's all that. And so you're just damned to hell, everlasting hell, because you sacrificed your life to dedicate it to the wrong version of God. And likewise, if you're Muslim, you could, again, sacrifice your life to God, do everything you can, be as charitable to mankind as you can possibly imagine to be, surrender all your money, do all your labor, everything for the benefit of your fellow man. But if you don't declare Jesus as your savior, you're going to Christian hell.
Yeah. Isn't it also interesting how everything is black and white until it comes to the Bible? And then everything is suddenly a metaphor. Everything is suddenly different nowadays because it was written at a time. Like everything is black and white. It's like, no, this and this and this and this. You're like, but what about in the Bible where it says to stone your daughter in the middle of the town if she wasn't a virgin when they got married? No. Like, what about the part of the Bible where it says don't eat pork or wear mixed fabrics? I feel like you do that every Super Bowl Sunday. No, it's different. It was a different time. It's just interesting to me how everything's black and white until you pull up the verse where it's not, where it very clearly states what the rules are. And suddenly that is a gray area with, historical, empirical changes and this and that. And it's very funny to me.
Let me share something with you, since I realize that we are like generationally hugely different. You strike me as 20, 25, something like
Thanks.
that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm old, and I think you're like, like a babe. And I mean a babe as in not a babe.
How dare
but
you?
I mean-
Canceled. How dare you?
Exactly. You're a child in by perspective, because like 1/3 of my life, whatever. So when I was a kid in my generation, there was this movie called Future Shock that was warning, that's the important word, for how things were going to be in the future. Now, it's a future you live in, you were born into, the future they warned us about, where it was a virtually cashless society, where you would pay for everything with a piece of plastic. You didn't have to worry about how much cash you had on your hand. You didn't have to worry about getting mugged and having all your cash taken away. If you needed to buy something expensive, you didn't have to run to the bank to get the cash to come back to the dealer to buy the thing. You could just take out the piece of plastic. That was a shock thing that we were warned the future had in store. That some people would have blue or pink or green hair. And people in my generation were horrified at the thought that there would be people walking around with green hair because they can dye their hair green.
Oh God, no.
But that's the world
No.
you're born into, right? And it's not a big damn deal. What the
It's
hell?
More people. So I accidentally shaved my head a few months ago. More people have opinions about me shaving my head than I had about not having the hair anymore. Like, it doesn't impact them at all. Just this warning. It's like, guys, things might be more convenient, and people might color their hair, and you may not have to run to the bank. You may just be able to, but don't worry. It's gonna be okay. Don't worry. I know that sounds horrible, but it's gonna be okay. And they're gonna make electric cars. It's gonna be just awful. You can get food
So
real quick.
when I hear the religious right talk about how people can just change their sex, okay, it takes me back to when we were supposed to be afraid of having credit cards, of having bank ATM cards. They were teaching us to be afraid of having an ATM card.
Beast. It's the mark of the beast.
Oh, how about this one? Your phone has a tracking device in it. It's got GPS, so that you don't not only do you know where you are all the time, they know where you are.
No, she, her, or he, him know where we are. Not they. Don't do that. Don't do that. Stop. God, I can't.
As to your shaven head, the thing that I've heard about the gingers all the time, whenever I meet somebody who's a natural redhead, and I'm judging by your eyebrows that you probably are, I would suggest you please turn up the volume on that shit.
Listen, that you have simultaneously paid me multiple of the best compliments I've ever received, because I have to draw these shits on every day, because I have red hair. They're invisible. I tell people all the time, like, our neighbors probably think that this apartment complex is haunted by a sickly Victorian child, because I just don't put my eyebrows on yet. So the fact that they match well enough, that piece de resistance.
Okay.
Dan D, thanks Sydney and Aron and the lurkers for making this happen. Thank you for making this happen, for donating your time and your resources and your money. We really appreciate you, Dan. Thank you so much. But yeah, I work really hard to get these to match. So that is perfection.
So, I spent most of my life growing up being told horrible things about our future.
I thought you were going to say about redheads. I was going to say,
no,
they're not wrong.
One of the things that bothered me was all these end times prophecies things that would come up. Like my family would be telling me that fluoridation was a communist plot. Seriously. So everything that we hear about today about the anti-vaxxers and all of these science denialists, this has been going on for decades. And I've been listening to all of these end times prophecies where any minute now, all of the systems, all the world governments are going to collapse. We're going to have to run for the hills. We're going to have to make an armed canned foods run on the grocery store and head for the hills. We've been told this shit forever. And I wish I hadn't been raised by preppers, but it's given me a very different view of the future. When people start talking about how they're afraid of a one world government, and I think, well, what is a one world government? It means that when you commit a crime in one country, you can't run to another country and escape prosecution for that crime.
I like that idea. That's a good idea. I feel like.
I like the idea of countries having their own independence. I
True.
do.
Yeah. But
But it
extradition is
shouldn't.
helpful.
Yes. Yes. And as far as being a cashless society, I don't see where the huge issue with that is either, because it used to be if you wanted to go buy something expensive, you had to have all that cash in your wallet. And now you have to fear for your life while you're going down to the car dealership or whatever.
Yes, people who have a problem with a cashless society have never been handed a 20 out of somebody's sweaty bra so they can keep their opinions to themselves. They need to just spend a couple days working in a grocery store or a restaurant. Yeah, no thanks. I'm all
But
for a cashless society.
what I see predominant in all of this is fear.
Yes.
Fear of change, fear of progress, and well, just really just fear of change, just period.
Mhm.
My grandfather told me in 1971, my grandfather told me that they've already invented everything they're ever going to invent.
Mhm.
Can you think of anything that was invented since 1971? I mean, shit. Can you imagine what a bleak perspective that must be?
Yes.
When we're always in the end times, when everything's about to go bad, you may think it's nice now, but it's not really.
No.
Why can't we enjoy now?
Right.
I think now is pretty nice, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
It's funny how much I enjoy living in the smartphone age,
I love it.
even though we all go out together. It's the first time we've all seen each other, and everybody's still looking at their phones. I get it, but I like that we have this advantage. I wish we could appreciate it.
Yeah. Yes. And the idea that somebody is against people inventing things to make your life simpler and simpler and simpler is wild. Now, I understand there is an argument I understand where people are worried about automation losing human jobs. That's where I'm like, I get that. Like when an entire Walmart has nothing but self-checkouts, that scares me. When they boil it down to just one person watching everybody and swiping and stuff like that. So I do understand why people might be afraid of technology taking over human jobs, but I don't understand the problem with things like Instacart, iPhones, faster Wi-Fi, electric cars, cleaner energy. If you don't want to partake in those things, you don't have to. And I think that's the biggest part with some of these people who have such far right beliefs is they misunderstand that, for example, just because gay marriage is legal in the US does not mean they have to get gay married. They do not have to do it. Just because abortion might be legal in some states, they don't have to do it if they don't want to. It's this idea where you would think the Bible says somewhere, if abortion exists, if gays are allowed to get married, everyone goes to hell. So do your best to make sure it doesn't happen anywhere at all, or that's your fault. And it doesn't say that. So I'm curious
Quite the
why.
opposite. I'm sorry.
I'm curious why people mind everybody else's business when it's so much easier to let them do the sinning, let them go to hell, let them burn forever, and you are fine. As long as you and your loved ones make it, that's all that matters, right?
Can I just add to that, because I love that?
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that I was a good looking young man, and I enjoyed all the advantages of that in my youth. And I've always been a cisgendered heterosexual, always comfortable in my own skin. And if I wasn't, I think I still would have been kind of comfortable in my skin. I never had any kind of body dysphoria or anything like that. I've always been kind of happy with who I am and the equipment that I was born into to work with. But I know a lot of other people are not. And I try to imagine from their perspective, how would it feel to look in the mirror and not see a person that is somebody that you identify as you, or that somebody that you feel you can be proud of or work with, right? And I've met people who've had severe disabilities where they're like where their entire life is inside of some conveyance. There's some electronic set of wheels that conveys their body around because they don't have the ability to get up and walk like me. And I'm glad that I wasn't part of that nightmare, but I understand that other people have a different perspective than me. They're not as comfortable with being who they are as I am with being with me. And I wish that everybody could enjoy the way that I feel, but I have to appreciate that other people don't for whatever reason. So if somebody tells me that they don't feel that they are the gender that they were born into, and they would prefer to be identified by another gender. I don't need them to prove the science that justifies that they feel that way.
Yep.
I think they can. I do. I think they can support. I think they can produce the science that justifies why they'll feel that way. But even if they couldn't, it doesn't matter. Why would it bother me?
Right. Right. Yes. Anytime somebody has a staunch opinion, it's like, does it cost you money? No. Okay. Did it make you late to work today? It did not. Okay. Does it impact your homeowner's insurance or the people who live within your house? No. Okay. So I don't understand. What's the problem? Right. There are things that I don't understand, and I do my best to understand them, but I feel like every day I'm learning something new. I've never misunderstood something and been so uncomfortable by something I don't understand so much that I went to Washington and was like, I want to change laws so that this thing that I don't like or that I don't understand doesn't exist. I don't have to look at it. That's a problem. That's a huge, like, just don't do the things that you don't want to do. And it's wild how quickly they will not impact your life whatsoever. Right. And the same people that are like, well, I have to see it, are the people that also have bumper stickers and flags and things on their cars that I have to see. Like, if we're arguing about who has to see what, I don't have decals on my car. It's just wild.
Back in the 20th century, I remember working with somebody who didn't want to be known as Dan. He wanted to be known as Rebecca. Like, okay.
Fine.
Hello, Becky. My name is Aron. It just wasn't that big a damn deal. Yeah. Why do we have a huge political movement in my state trying to target people who have this minority position? Why would we want to why are we trying to target our own fucking people? What fucking difference does it make? But they're making felony crimes out of existing in my state.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Absolutely. And it's just like, I can't fathom waking up in that brain every day, waking up in that kind of space where you're like, no, this, I just can't have it. Well, I've yet to see what they're afraid it's going to do, right? They go down this, well, if you're allowed to pick your gender, then everybody's going to be picking the gender. Okay, and then what? Well, then everybody's going to pick their gender. Okay, and then what? Well, and then you're going to have to ask people what their gender is. You have to ask them their name. So then what? And when you play the then what game, nobody ever dies in the end. It never leads to somebody dying in the end. It never leads to them being charged more for taxes in the end.
Have you noticed that the people who are now complaining about wokeism are the exact same people who 15 years ago were saying, wake up, sheeple?
Yes. Wake up, I'm awake. Oh no, you're woke. Oh no. Oh no. Oh gosh, no. Or when they're like, look around you, and you look around you and you point out the problems they caused, and they're like, no, don't look there. Wait, stop. That's not what we wanted you to say. Wait, hold on, close your eyes, go back to sleep. We liked it better that way. It's just wild. I don't understand. But all I know is that I hope for the rest of my life, if I don't understand something, I Google it. If I still don't understand something, I just forget about it. I'm like, okay, it doesn't apply to me. It's not for me. In stand-up, we always say, if you don't think my joke is funny, it just wasn't for you, right? It just wasn't for you. It's for somebody else. And I feel that way about life, and that I never go to Washington and I'm like, look, my neighbor is so fucking annoying that I want you to make legislation that tells them how they have to live their life. Right? No, that's what the HOA is for. Like, let them take care of whatever your neighbor's doing that's annoying. I just don't understand. I hope I never become the kind of person who my entire day is inventing scenarios in my head so that I can justify being angry at other people. And I hope I never become a person who just claims to believe things because it's easier to just follow the rules than to actually think about it too hard.
And you notice that the very same people, again, who make this term snowflake, that you're this rare and special thing, you know, aren't you so fragile? These are the very same people who back in my generation, when I was a kid, were the ones who were so easily offended by every goddamn thing and still are.
Yes, they say you're a snowflake. You say he's not my president, and they go, how dare you? How dare you? You take that back right now. And you're like, just I don't know. We could go on all night. Is anybody going to call? Somebody call. Disagree with us. Help us start a fight.
I would love that, because I'm tired of agreeing with you.
Yeah. I don't know. What's a controversial opinion that you have that we can argue about? Let's see. I eat pineapple on pizza.
Everything I just said was controversial. Unfortunately, you agreed with all of that.
I mean, you can tell. Look at my haircut. Of course, I agree with you. Of course, I agree with you. Let's see. Check out the comments.
Now I'm going to say that there's a number of people that I have admired in the past who have later said stupid things.
Yes.
And I said this a decade ago, and so far it hasn't happened in that decade. But I did say a decade ago that I'm going to say something stupid at some point.
Yep.
And people are going to call me out for it. And it's going to inevitable. When that happens, I hope that I have the wherewithal to own it.
Yep.
And correct it.
Absolutely.
Whereas I've seen people that I used to admire double down.
Right. And you feel, they feel attacked and they get on the defense, but it's like, just admit when you're wrong and admit when you did something stupid, and it blows over so much easier. It helps if you do a stand-up bit about it and then film it and then put it on YouTube. That way when people are like, she said that, you're like, and I monetized it first, so this is me. Like, I don't know, of course I said it, I put it up there myself. But yeah, I think always admitting and always taking constructive feedback and constructive criticism and listening, because I'll be old one day and young people will come for me.
If you're lucky.
Well, I mean, like, young people are going to come for me one day for things I said at this age that politically and socially were the thing to say right now, were the correct side to be on. But as we change and as we grow and as we adapt, I'm sure I've said a million things that'll get me in trouble when I'm older. But like you said, I hope I'm the kind of person that's like, yikes, my bad. I'm sorry, and I won't do it again. There's a reason I delete all my old tweets. That's
another advantage I have over you. When I was your age, everybody didn't have a high-def video camera in their pocket.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff I can just casually allude to stupid shit I used to say, and nobody has a recording of it.
And you didn't have Twitter to put it out there for everybody to retweet and screenshot. Yeah, definitely.
I'd be having to own and correct so much.
Definitely. Let's see here. We've got a couple questions here. We see how flawed Darwin thinking is. It is no longer a viable theory, and it is only continued as a baseless faith statement.
Excuse me. Obvious troll is obvious.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do disagree. Do you believe aliens have visited us? What's your best argument or evidence? Asking for evidence to disprove something is not fair. That's not how you...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure aliens have visited us. I spent an awful lot of my life in El Paso, Texas. I knew there was a lot of aliens. I met a lot of aliens. Yeah, and immigration was looking for a lot of them.
Then my answer to assertions of God created everything has always been, if everything needs a creator, who created God? I never get a good response back.
Carl Sagan said that if people say, well, God is eternal, he said, okay, well, then why not save a step? Why not say that the universe is eternal? And that's a fair point. I have had the rare opportunity to talk to a number of leading cosmologists, and they've told me that even in multiple of them, even Lawrence Krauss, who wrote the book A Universe from Nothing, had to redefine nothing. So I don't know any atheist alive who believes everything came from nothing. Christians will tell you that all day, but nobody believes that. That's a straw man. In models of cosmogony that have a singularity, that singularity is eternal. It exists. You know, they say, what's before the Big Bang? The singularity. The singularity is right there at the beginning. So if it is that time began there, then we're looking at an asymptote where you know, time slows down the closer you get to t equals 0, right? So that the thing is eternal. And if that doesn't make any sense, it doesn't have to. It's also irrelevant, because it doesn't matter whether or if the universe had a beginning. That doesn't need, whatever the explanation is there, it doesn't change the fact that we are evolving apes and that all of our collective scriptures are man-made mythology.
Yes. Yes. I also think what separates a lot of times people I trust and people that I don't trust are people who are willing to admit when they don't know something versus people who circle and circle and circle in order to sound like they have an answer for everything. And so if someone were to say God created everything and I were to say then who created God, and they were to be like, that's a great question, I don't know, I would be much more likely to find that person tolerable than somebody who sits there and circles and circles and circles trying to come up with some HR sounding answer that doesn't really answer anything but fills up enough time that they feel like they answered the question.
That's actually my next book. Yeah, it's supposed to be out by the end of this year, but that's actually my next book. I'm going to be talking about where God came from, who created God.
Who do you think? Or I guess I'll buy the book. I'll buy the book and read it. We have a caller.
Yeah,
oh, sorry. Continue.
It's called Answering Genesis.
Ooh, I like that title. Answering Genesis. Will it be available on Amazon, Kindle? How will people be able to get it?
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. And it will be in a very familiar narrator's voice.
That's funny. I was trying to think of a joke to make there, and I couldn't think of one fast enough. All right. Let's see here. Let's see if we can hear Pat. Are you there, Pat?
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. How's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Well, I'll keep this brief. George Carlin once famously said that, when you look in a room, 50% of people are dumber than average and 50% are more intelligent than average. And I'm wondering, given Aron's, long time dealing with certain people that may not be prone to understanding, wanting to learn, or even having the ability to sometimes process what he's trying to teach them. When do you just not try anymore? I mean, is there a demographic, a portion of our population that's never going to be able to get it? Just they don't have the capacity to do so. And I'll listen off the air.
Sure. Yesterday, I challenged somebody who was telling me that evolution is this faith-based myth, because we always get that kind of troll. And I said, okay, well, I've been offering this challenge for a quarter of a century that I will prove evolution to your satisfaction. It's so easy to do. But the problem is the wanna-believers, the wanna-pretenders, the people who want to make believe something else and ignore reality are terrified of me being able to show the proof of evolution. And so what I've had, most people will just run away. They run from that challenge like cockroaches scurrying away when you turn on the kitchen light. But the few that have taken it in the quarter century that I've been offering this, the 25 years or so that I've been offering this challenge, the few that have taken it up have all failed, with one exception, have all failed for the same reason. They habitually refuse. They repeatedly ignore direct questions, because I'm trying to use a Socratic method. Okay, so what we have to do, first of all, we have to correct some of your misinformation, because you've been fed a lot of bullshit. So you've been told that evolution teaches things evolution never taught. And so we're going to have to correct that. First of all, and let's just start with definitions. What is evolution? We'll start with that. Most people can't get past that. Right. When they realize, here's the definition, here's the way I describe it, here it is on Berkeley University's Evolution 101 introductory primer, here it is on a half a dozen other academic sources. Look it up anywhere from any science institution, anybody teaching evolution. Look at these definitions, look how they match. Look how none of them ever even allow for everything coming from nothing, or life coming from non-life, or one kind of thing changing into or turning into another fundamentally different kind of life, because all of those are creationist straw men. Those are not evolution. This is what evolution really is. Correct yourself and accept. Do you understand and accept? This is what evolution really is. That's usually where the conversation ends. They will not admit any fucking error right out the gate. They can't even accept the definition. But they'll say, well, that's just microevolution. Oh, well, now we get to argue about what micro and macroevolution are.
I've never gotten that far, to be honest. I've never had anyone say microevolution.
Here's the definitions originally provided by both for both by the original sources. Here's what they mean. Do you now understand the problem with that? No, we very rarely have ever gotten to step 2, because you usually can't get past step 1.
Right.
Only once my whole life has anybody ever honored the rule. You cannot repeatedly refuse direct points or queries. If you refuse to acknowledge, if you just repeatedly ignore, so that I have to keep repeating the question over and over again and you still won't answer it, then I'm under no obligation to continue. Only once has anybody had the honesty to actually address the questions and continue on through fruition. That person married me.
And she's regretted it ever since. She's regretted it ever since.
To some degree, I'm sure.
Why'd I go that far in the conversation? How did I end up here? Well, Aron, this has been wonderful. Before I close this out for the evening, I just want to give a quick shout out to the patrons. We have Eric Ozols, Tara S., Rion, Dean and Murphy, Dan D., Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, Phil Calderone. And speaking of Patreon, Aron has a Patreon. Talk Haven has a not Talk Haven. A Skeptic Haven has a Patreon. I was looking at Let's Talk. And as we mentioned earlier, if you do like to see change, and if you do like to see people fighting back against things like religious pressures and things like that as they make it up to Washington, the best way to do that is to support people who are out here making the content, going to the events and the giving speeches and putting podcasts out there, anything that they can do to put their voice out there and the message out there, and to let people know that this belief is an option. The atheist and the agnostic belief is an option, and secularism is not scary. It shouldn't be illegal. They shouldn't be fighting against us, even though we are fighting the war on Christmas and Christianity on a daily basis. But Aron, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I know that our chatters and our commenters have also really enjoyed hearing what you have to say. Is there any final thoughts from you before we let you go for the evening?
Just that I genuinely enjoyed being on with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I would love to talk to you again soon. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, goodbye.